Emily's world crumbles in an instant as she realizes her family's werewolf identity and deeper secrets, feeling betrayed by those closest to her. How will she unravel the mystery of her identity and find her true self in the process? Ready to delve into Emily's supernatural abilities? Subscribe now and don't miss a single moment. Chapter 19. So, we're here, Thomas said, scratching the back of his neck and looking at the spot between my eyes. Is this boy being serious? The whole ride here, his hands were clutching the steering wheel, making his knuckles turn white. He hardly said a word to me for the whole 10-minute drive to the pack house, and it was killing me. In fact, I think the only thing he said to me was, "I hope why you don't mind staying at the pack house. Jade's the only one to there. We had to get out of our house due to, the situation with our dad." More like stuttered. My response was just a sigh and another eye roll. I walked towards the wooden door of the yellow pack house, Thomas following a few feet behind. I yawned and my eyes were beginning to droop in exhaustion. It was probably already 2 in the morning and I was afraid we might wake up a sleeping Jade. Therefore I just walked in without knocking. I know, call me rude, but waking up Jade was the last thing I wanted to do. Especially since what she had went through tonight. Thomas seemed to have read my mind. Wait, I forgot. He could read my mind because he quietly shut the door, the little click ringing through the silence. Afterwards, he turned on a nearby lamp so human eyes, specifically mine, could see. Right when Thomas was about to say something to me, his mouth opening and closing a few times, Jade strutted in with her head in a book. Her black hair clipped back messily and her pajamas a bright pink. "Hey, finally you're home," her nose twitched, obviously tracing my scent. She looked up and shut her book, running towards me and engulfing me in a big hug. My breath was knocked off from me as Jade ranted. "Holy crap, Dee, are you alright?" she asked, moving back from me a little, inspecting my arms and legs. "I heard what happened. Pack stuff." "Ugh, I should have came the moment I heard the news, but I didn't want to cause so much more burden." "I'm so Jade," I yelled over her rant, gripping both of her wrists in mine. "Relax. I'm fine." She blew out a sigh before hugging me again. "I'm just worried about you. Anyways, why are you here? Not that I don't want you here or anything, because I do. I just thought your mom would have wanted you home." Her thin eyebrows scrunched up, leaving a crease in between them. She looked over to Thomas curiously before scratching her face. I watched silently as they just looked at each other, both of their faces changing expressions every few seconds. It didn't take me long to realize they were having a conversation by the pack link. I crossed my arms over my chest, not liking the fact that I was out of the loop once again. "Okay," Jade sighed, clapping her hand once. I straightened my posture as her blue eyes grew big, and she gave me a smile that made me feel suspicious. "You two have fun. I'm just going to go to bed now because man," she said, stretching her arms and faking a yawn, "am I tired. Good night, brother, and I hope you enjoy your stay here. I will be in my room if you need me." She bounded up the stairs after giving me a brief hug. I eyed Thomas accusingly, which he just returned with a shrug. "Okay, I'm pretty sure you're tired. So follow me," Thomas said, breaking the awkward silence. I followed close behind him, noticing that his shoulders were tense. Opening the first door on the right revealed a room that screamed Weston all over it. The walls were a grayish blue and his neatly tucked, king-sized bed sat in the middle. The sheets were black, shining slightly from the light that was emitting from the white lampshade near his bed. Obviously it was black silk, and for some reason, that sent butterflies to erupt in my belly. The carpet was white and shaggy, giving the room a cozy feeling. Even his couch was white. A black door that sat on the left wall was obviously his bathroom. His huge mahogany desk that sat underneath the window on the right wall was neat. Everything in this room was neat. I gaped like a fish, but quickly shut my mouth as I realized Thomas was watching my reaction. I cleared my throat before saying, "Nice room. Thanks," he replied before going to a mahogany dresser and rummaging through it. He pulled out a gray t-shirt and some blue basketball shorts. "So I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I know you're feeling icky in that shirt that you were sweating in all night, and those shorts are filled with little glass crystals. We both don't want you feeling, uncomfortable tonight." He handed the items to me, still not looking me straight in the eyes. I just sighed as I watched him go back to his dresser, pulling out shorts and a shirt for him. He then sat at his leather chair, still not looking at me. "Thanks," I sighed again and trudged to the bathroom, feeling irritation from the way he was acting. I quickly changed my clothes and groaned when the shorts kept slipping off. I decided regretfully that I had to ditch the shorts and just stick with the shirt. Luckily, the shirt reached mid-thigh and wasn't too short for my black lacy thong to peep through it. Then I groaned again when I realized I wasn't wearing a bra. The tank top I was wearing earlier had a built-in bra, and if I were to wear it again I'd smell like a dying pig. I mentally slapped my mom for not handing me extra clothes before shipping me off over here. Inhaling Weston's amazing scent once more, I opened the bathroom door remorsefully. Yes, I was feeling sorry over poor old me. I mean, what girl wouldn't, right? Weston's back was facing to me as he played with a pencil on his desk. I noticed he already changed into a similar gray shirt and black basketball shorts. Once he heard the door close again, he looked back at me. His smile fading as his eyes trailed down my body, his eyes lingering on my legs a bit longer. His Adam's apple moved up and down as he gulped and his eyes were dilating, becoming darker. He quickly shut his eyes and he shook his head, trying to clear any thoughts he had at the moment. I felt my face heat up, especially after I saw him in a failed attempt to cover his happy camper with a nearby pillow. Now I really wanted to pinch my mom for letting me stay here. Shifting uncomfortably, I decided to throw the shorts at him, which he quickly caught. I said, sorry, the shorts were too big for me. It kept sliding off. He looked everywhere else but me, training his eyes on the bookshelf behind me. You want to borrow Jade's clothes instead? And no, I stuttered. Now don't get the wrong idea. I wasn't a slut or anything. I just didn't want to be a burden to Jade. You know that feeling of being ashamed to stay at someone's house for your benefit? Yeah, I was definitely feeling that right now. The thought of borrowing someone's clothes were a pain to me. Even Weston's shirt was enough to make me feel like I was a bother. No, you're not a bother. Actually, you're welcomed anytime, Thomas said, moving to the bed to grab some pillows. He still was acting silly, not looking at me in the eye at all this whole trip here. So you can sleep on the bed. I'll take the couch. Weston, I said, grabbing his arm when he was about to pass me. The familiar heat came back to me, pulsing at the places we made contact. He finally looked down at me with those beautiful blue eyes and I smiled slightly. He smiled back and I almost forgot what I was about to say. Seriously, if you're uncomfortable with my being here, I could go home or stay with Jade, as much as I don't want to bother her. I began to move towards the door when I felt Thomas freeze under my hand. His eyes were distant and his face was emotionless once again. Nearing the door, he half yelled no. Then his strong arms gripped my waist, turning me around and hugging me. He buried his face in my wavy hair, which was so not in a good shape right now. I squeaked when I felt his warmth seep through the thin cotton of our shirts. His chest touching my chest made the blood rush up my neck and cheeks because the thought of not wearing a bra hit me again. Please don't leave. I can't bear the thought of you being out of my sight. I felt my arms wrap around him, my hands running up and down his back in comfort. Then why are you being like this? I whispered against his chest. Because I'm afraid I might hurt you, which I might lose control, especially seeing you in my shirt. Gosh, Els, you're so beautiful and you smell so freaking good, he complimented, inhaling my scent that made me go weak in the knees. That's why I'm scared. I don't trust myself. Hey, I said sternly, pushing him away slightly. His arms were still around my waist where I wanted them to be at. My hands were holding his face, fingers brushing his cheeks, which held a slight pink tinge. Gosh, the look he was giving me was sending my heart in overdrive. I trust you, Weston, I whispered, going up on my tiptoes and giving him a lingering peck. I looked into his blue eyes that were now fluttering closed. It was filled with so much passion and adoration that it made the butterflies in my stomach much worse. My eyes fluttered closed as well as I felt his warm lips meet mine again. That was all it took for my toes to curl and my lips to stretch and to smile against his. He too smiled and grabbed my hand that rested on his shoulder, intertwining our fingers. His other hand wrapped around my waist, bringing us closer. I felt his heartbeat quicken with mine, and at this precise moment, I wanted nothing more than to be with this guy. I felt his tongue sweep across my lips, and as granted, I gave him entrance. We both moaned at the same time as our dance together. I giggled into his mouth while he chuckled into mine. This kiss was so sweet and passionate. It wasn't rushed, pushed, or rough. It was perfect in every way. It made me think he wanted this moment to last too, as he sucked my lips and kissed me silly. However, I was just a regular human being that eventually ran out of breath. Because Thomas noticed it, he pulled away, kissing the crescent-shaped mark he gave me that night he bit me. That was all it took for me to gasp and let out a breathy moan. He eventually continued to suck at that sweet part, making it darker for everyone to see. "You are mine," he murmured across my skin. He inhaled my scent deeply and kissed the mark he gave me. I shuddered as he lightly nipped it. "Emily, you are mine and only mine, you understand." Once he came back up and rested his forehead against mine, I smiled at him. The warm smile he gave me was enough to make my eyes sparkle in happiness. His eyes were dilating again as they were turning darker to a light gold and into his normal blue ones. I nodded against him and said, "Always. He laughed and pulled away reluctantly, still holding my hand. "Well, you better get some sleep, Els. I promised your mom I'd take care of you." He led me to his bed, pulling the covers for me as I laughed. I lay down on his soft bed and sighing as I felt the silk caress my skin. Only now I realized that I was tired as I felt my eyes droop. "By the way, what were you really talking to my mom about?" I asked, my voice raspy from exhaustion. His eyebrow shot up before answering sternly, "Just staying here like she said." The way he said it made me know not to ask any more questions. So I just nodded and yawned. Thomas gave me a quick kiss on the forehead before saying, "Good night, Els." "Hey, where do you think you're going?" I asked irritably when I saw him heading to the couch. "To sleep," he said, dumbfounded. I rolled my eyes and patted the spot next to me. "Nope, you're asleep next to me." But he began, his eyes displaying indecision. "No buts. Just come over here," I said, crossing my arms and giving him the best puppy dog face I could muster. "Please." He rolled his eyes before sighing and pulling the covers, getting in next to me. I watched as he scooted a bit closer and wrapped his arms around me. "Fine, just for you," he said as I closed my eyes. "Whatever, you know you wanted to," I said, popping one eye open. "Oh, shut up and go to sleep, Els." I eyed his shirt and gave him a pointed look. "Just get comfortable like always. Keep calm and take your shirt off. We all know most guys sleep without a shirt. It's like nature for them," I said in a matter-of-fact tone. "You just want to see me shirtless," he smirked, waggling his eyebrows. Maybe I shrug. "Just take off the damn shirt." He sat up, pulling the shirt over his head and throwing it on his couch. He gave me that "are you happy now" look. I smirked and gave him a once-over, lingering my eyes on his six-packs. I nodded appreciatively before he snorted and said, "Perv." He lay back down again and I smacked his shoulder. "Whatever." I tried to ignore the heat emitting from his body, especially being so close to him like this. I kept my arms to myself as he wrapped one around my waist. Trust me, I was afraid what I might do if I touched that delicious chest and his six-pack. I was scared like him that I might lose control. "Maybe we should be even. Take off your shirt now," Thomas mocked, smirking at me. I rolled my eyes and ignored the red tinting my cheeks. Obviously, he had known I wasn't wearing a bra. Then, he said nothing but looked at me with concern. His eyes stared into my green ones. His face read it all: fear, concern, doubt, etc. We stayed like that for a couple of minutes before I trailed a finger down his jawline in comfort. "What are you thinking about?" I whispered. "Nothing," he lied. "We both know that's a lie." "What's really up?" "Well," he sighed and hugged me closer. "Don't take this the wrong way, but I have a bad feeling about Kelly. My brother's wife." I asked, my eyebrows rising up. "Yeah, I just think it was odd. She has been gone to the bathroom for almost an hour and we had that incident in your room. And since she arrived, you've been threatened. It's just too big of a coincidence." "Weston," I sighed, rubbing his cheek with my thumb. "Kelly would never do that. We can't just assume things, okay? I know you're worried about me. Let's just drop it for now, okay? I'm really sleepy." He nodded in understanding and kissed my nose and forehead again. That was all it took for me to close my eyes and drift into a deep sleep. My eyes fluttered open and all I could see was the light streaming from the slit of the curtains. To tell you the truth, I thought I'd see Thomas since he was sleeping in front of me when I drifted to sleep last night. However, he wasn't in sight. But the sound of his snoring and the heat that was being blown onto my neck confirmed that he was now behind me. I felt his arm around my waist and I would have felt comfortable in this position. But of course I didn't. I felt his, pressing against my back and my face flushed at how huge it felt. His leg that was between mine crept higher and higher and the hand that belonged to the arm slung across my waist was rubbing my stomach all too passionately. His hand then moved from my stomach, down my legs, and it rubbed against my inner thigh, moving dangerously close to my private area. I squeaked, but he didn't hear me. As he was moving back up, I heard him mutter something, but I couldn't place a finger on what he said. His hand moved dangerously up my arm, leaving a trail of goosebumps there. I felt his warm hand go back down to my belly before going back up and cupping one of my breasts, ignoring what he was muttering. Even if it felt really good, I squeaked in embarrassment, my face going a deep shade of red. This caused Thomas to shoot his eyes open and look at me in alert, eyeing the room for any danger. He noticed my red face before he followed his hand down to where he was currently groping. This caused him to jolt back enough for him to fall off the bed and landing on the floor with a loud thump. I laughed at him even if this situation was kind of awkward and looked at his figure on the floor, his hand rubbing the back of his head. "I'm so sorry, Els. I really didn't know what I was doing," Thomas said, smiling apologetically. "Oh, shut up, big boy. You apologize too much for accidents," I said irritably before pouting. "Don't I get a good morning kiss?" Chapter 20. Wow, this chapter is long, but here it is. And sorry if there are grammar mistakes. Not edited. And finally, the moment you have all been waiting for, Father Gregory has said, smiling widely at the two couples looking eagerly at him. What was I supposed to say again?" he asked, scratching his balding head, white patches of hair peeping through. The corner of his eyes crinkled in amusement as he smiled wickedly at the couple who was practically jumping up and down with impatience. The crowd laughed at Father Gregory's sense of humor and Darren and Kelly's impatience. I mean, it was a huge crowd, the church filled with all of our small-town citizens, ranging from a newborn to the elderly who were able to make some history in our town. Even Kelly's immediate family was there, but boy was it huge. She had about 17 brothers and sisters and 13 nephews and nieces. Some of her cousins and close friends showed up as well. My face was screwed up into the utmost happiness for my brother. My light pink tinted lips stretched into a big smile that made the corners of my eyes wrinkle. I was glad that our beauty artist had put on waterproof mascara and eyeliner, because crying and tearing up was all I was able to do this whole procession. I watched as my brother, who was in a black tux and his hair slicked up messily, encircled his arm around Kelly's petite waist. He looked charming as ever, with his brown eyes twinkling and his face in utter happiness. Kelly wiped away a stray tear, her dark red, long-lasting lipstick a huge contrast to her pale and pretty face. Her dress was pretty, with jewels, studs, and crystals that shined across the ivory silk material of the corset top. The dress ended in a big poof that reached the floor. But when she picked it up so she could walk, we saw white pumps with intricate details. Finally, her trail that seemed like a waterfall as it cascaded behind her. Her blonde hair swept into an updo. Her bangs curled to frame her face. I had to say the couple looked stunning perfect. My mom, who sat beside me on the pew, sobbed silently. She looked at me before she smiled and clutched my hand in her own. I squeezed her hand gently as she whispered, "I can't believe he's getting married already. My baby boy. All grown up." I patted her hand and almost laughed, but we were in a church for crying out loud. And I was one of Kelly's bridesmaids. If I laughed now, everyone would give me the stink eye. "Okay, fine, Darren," Father Gregory sighed, slugging his shoulders playfully. "The moment you have all been waiting for, or shall I say the moment Darren has been waiting for." He smiled, adding a dramatic affect before raising his hand slightly and saying, "You may now kiss the bride. Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Darren Saunders." Everyone hooped and clapped as Darren swept Kelly so close to him. They looked into each other's eyes first before their lips met halfway. I smiled as their eyes closed and their arms went around each other. I clapped loudly, even cheering loudly with everyone else. They pulled away, everyone clapping again. Afterwards we took pictures, the flash blinding my eyes. The pictures ranged from family members to close friends, siblings, in-laws, entourage, etc. When we were done, my vision was completely obscured with black dots. Everyone exited the church and waited in the parking lot that was overflowing with cars. The cars even parking near the road. I had to say this was the biggest wedding I've ever seen in our small town. "Okay, everyone," Darren yelled, his arm still encircled around Kelly. He raised his other arm in the air, his fist clear to the swarm of people. "Let's party." I laughed at his bluntness at wanting to celebrate. Well, I didn't blame him. He just got married to someone who loves him equally, maybe even more. All I knew was that they loved each other and that was all that mattered. "Oh gosh, Emily," Mom sobbed, wiping her tears lightly with a tissue. Her cheeks and nose were red. She fixed her light pink dress lightly before clutching me in a hug. "I can't believe my kids are growing up so fast." "Mom," I laughed, but a deep voice that sent me shivers interrupted me. "Wow," Thomas said from behind me. I turned around to find him with his head held high and his mouth set into a tiny smile. His blue eyes twinkled as he saw smile at him appreciatively. I ran up to him, flinging my arms around his neck in a tight embrace while his arms went around my waist. I shuddered lightly when I heard him sharply inhale my scent and instantly, I felt his body calm down under my touch. I closed my eyes and relished the warmth of him near me. Then he pushed me away slightly, taking my hand and twirling me around. "Don't you look beautiful?" he said proudly, eyeing my attire. My dark hair was swept to one side in a fancy ponytail, soft curls falling through it. I wore makeup today. Something I haven't done in a long time, making my green eyes pop out from my dark and long eyelashes that were coated with mascara. Even my lips popped out with the light pink lipstick I have on. My pink dress was made of silk, one shoulder sleeved covered in flowers and the length being promising, the dress hugging my curves right below my knees. Even in these black heels, I was still a head shorter than Weston. "You don't look too bad yourself," I said, winking at him and eyeing him up and down. He was in a white button-down shirt that rolled up to his sleeves and dark wash jeans finished up with Nike shoes. His jet black hair was styled messily like always. "Yeah, I know I do," he said cockily, leaning down and kissing my cheek, still holding my hand. I kissed his cheek as well, lingering my lips on his smooth skin for longer than necessary. I knew we had to keep it innocent, especially in front of my mom and my family. "Hey Ella," he said, clearing his throat and slung his arm around my shoulder. "You look beautiful," he continued, still trying to impress my mom. "Oh, shut up," my mom said sternly, ignoring the look I gave her. "You don't have to kiss up to me. You do enough for me, letting my daughter stay with you until her room is done being fixed." She gave him a warm smile that she hardly gave people unless she really trusted and knew them. I felt Thomas shift his weight. As I looked up at him, he looked down at me with a 100-watt smile. It was as if he won the lottery 2 times in a row. "It's really no problem, Ella. I'd do anything for her," he said sincerely. Even if it was what most guys said, I knew he truly meant it as I saw his pupils dilate a little bit, sending my heart in overdrive. "Call me Mom," she said, adding a wink. "You better be careful," I said to Weston, chuckling silently. "Aunt Heather is checking you out." We looked towards the table where my 60-year-old aunt sat. She pushed her round framed glasses up, squinting at Thomas even if she wore glasses. When she realized we were looking at her, she fluffed her auburn-colored wig and smiled, showing her pearly white dentures. Oh gosh, this was like family reunion. Everyone asked how I was, if I work, whether my grades were bad or not, what I was up to nowadays, etc. However, all I knew is that they were asking just to find something to gossip about. Some of the older ones were warm and honest, and I loved that. When I mean that everyone was at the wedding, I meant everyone I knew as well. The Stone and Crescent pack were here, and let me tell you, they were all dressed so stunningly that everyone else looked plain and dull. All my classmates were here, friends and acquaintances that I had said hi to as well. Even some of the girls who gave me glares as Thomas and I made contact were there. Many of them are the sluts he played with before, and my cousins that the majority of them were only probably 13 or 14. "Hey, let's go dance," Thomas whispered in my ear, sending shivers down my spine. I cocked an eyebrow and looked straight into his eyes. "You dance?" "Oh yeah, Dee. He dances," Jade said, flipping her slick straight hair behind her shoulder, her hair looking like a waterfall against that lilac dress. "Ask the guys. He has some moves," Jet said, nudging Eli, who was too busy staring at Abigail. Warren just nodded his head, digging it in his food. Alex and Dustin snickered at their motion. Abigail blushed, but Charles clutched her close to him as if to tell Eli to back off. If you asked where Jared was, he was on the dance floor already. Apparently, the music was the bomb, as Jared had said. I laughed once again as I met Weston's impatient eyes again. "I would love to," I smiled. We got up from the round table we were all sitting on, leaving them to eat while Eli and Jet played with the pink and red floral centerpiece. I walked towards the dance floor that had drapes coming out from the romantic faux roof top with Thomas close behind. Right when we got there, the music changed into a slow one. Thomas pulled me close to him, his hands around my waist and his chin resting on my head. I sighed, leaning into him, my head against his chest. I welcomed his warmth, smell, and his erratic heartbeat. To tell you the truth, I totally forgot that there were people there. That the newlyweds were dancing as well, and the other couples came up on stage. All I felt was me and him, living the moment like it was our last. "You're not too bad," I joked as Thomas twirled me around. "Not too bad. Now that hurts," he feigned hurt, his lips pouting playfully. I squeaked as he skillfully dipped me, him smiling widely at me as he hovered over me. He pulled us back, touching his forehead to mine. I stared at his blue eyes, amazed at the depth and feelings that swam around it. We heard someone clear their throats. Turning our heads reluctantly, we saw Jared standing awkwardly. I smiled at him as he said, "Hey man, do you mind if I dance with Emily?" "No," I answered as Thomas sighed and let go of me unwillingly. I laughed at his bluntness. "Come on big boy, just one song. Besides, I miss Jar." I watched as Thomas flicked my nose, and before I could protest, he ran away and asked my mom politely if she wanted to dance. Putting my hand in Jared's own, he pulled me close to him in a friendly way and I sighed, realizing how much I actually missed him. "I didn't know you had an older brother." "Let alone him being my brother's best man," I said, nodding to an older-looking Jared. He wore a red button-down and slacks, his hair blonde and messy. He had a little scruff and charming hazel eyes. Jared shrugged and said, "That's how I knew your brother. He and Jamie, my brother, are best friends." I feel smart. "I learned something," I said while he chuckled. "You look beautiful tonight, by the way," Jared said as we swayed to the music. "What?" "No cheesy pickup line," I gasped, secretly smiling in the inside. "Better be careful, Jar. Your reputation status is going low." "Oh shush that tiny pie hole. I'm at a wedding. I feel particularly romantic," he scoffed. "So why don't you ask Jade to dance?" I said, motioning my eyes in her direction where she smiled at Eli and Jet as they told her a story. He looked at her for a while before a blush crept its way onto his neck and face. Even his ears were pink. I cocked my eyebrow at him, waiting for his reply. "Because, well, hello, she's Jade," he sighed. "I can never meet her expectations." I pinched his cheeks while he scowled at me. "Oh, is the little blushing player finally shy? Has he finally found the one special crush?" I cooed. He swatted my hand away and his cheeks reddened. "Be quiet, Emily. You're so loud. She is the one." I just was too in denial to realize it sooner, he blurted out. Once my eyes widened and his mouth clamped shut when he realized what he just said. I pinched his arm. "Ow," he yelled, earning some glares from people. "Ask her to dance. You idiot," I demanded, clenching my teeth and putting my hands on my hips. He looked at me in horror as I slapped his shoulder again. "Go. Fine how I said I would," Jared exclaimed, running towards Jade, who watched him with big eyes. I smiled cheekily as Thomas came back and wrapped his arms around me again. "Oh Emily, what have you done this time?" he teased, kissing my forehead. "They'll be thanking me later." "Yeah, right after they." Well, isn't it my big girl so grown up already? Never thought I'd see the day where she's clinging to a boy," a familiar voice said with smugness. I turned around to see the person I tried so hard to avoid this whole night. He held a wine glass with the red wine staining its clear surface while his other hand held the itsy-bitty waist of the blonde woman who was half his age. "Tell me, do I have to beat you up, Sonny, just to let you know not to hurt my daughter?" "Dad," I said, scowling at his little remark. I felt Thomas straighten up behind me, his chest against my back and his hands rubbing smoothing circles on my waist. My father's narrowed eyes flew to his hands and back to my face again. I turned my head to look at Sandra, who was busy trying to throw a flirtatious smile to Thomas, who was completely ignoring her. She had on all the diamonds where it was possible to be at: diamond necklace, rings, bracelet, anklets, or whatever you name. Hell, even the one strap on her inappropriate dress, which was clung to her body, hugging her balloon, plastic boobs and short enough to see her butt cheek popping out, was encrusted with diamonds. "Sandra," I sneered as she gagged at me. "Tell me, honey, is that young boy forcing you into all of this?" my father said, eyeing Weston. "No," I scoffed, patting Weston's hand that went stiff. "Don't lie to me," my father said while I rolled my eyes. I tried to keep my calm, feeling Thomas behind me, his breath tickling the hair on top of my head. Oh, come on, George, Sandra said in her nasally voice. Why would he go for her? I was about to pounce on her, but I wanted to hear my father's reply. He looked at us while I felt Weston's hand start to shake at my hips. I held it in both my hands, trying to calm him down. The corner of my father's lip went up as he said, "That's exactly what I was thinking." She looks like a slut now, Georgie, Sandra said, flipping her hair. Oh, it was on. I let go of Weston, already trying to pounce on the blonde bimbo in front of me while the tears spilled out of my eyes. Even my dad deserved a smack in the face. Right when my nails were about to reach her face and her high-pitched scream sounded in the air, Thomas wrapped his arms around my waist and pushed me behind him. Jared helped hold me back while I was struggling so hard in his arms. Mr. Saunders, I heard the bitterness in Weston's tone. I think the only person here trying to hurt her is you, and he turned his head a little and I'm guessing it was at Sandra before continuing, Ms. Blondie over here. And if you are really wondering why I'm going for your daughter, it's because she's beautiful in every single way possible. Look, son, I don't think you know who you're talking to. My father's voice rang out in the silence. From where I could see, my dad had stepped up, his nose now touching Weston's own even if Thomas was a few inches taller than him. No disrespect, Mr. Saunders, but I think I do, Thomas challenged. Right before my dad could throw a punch, Darren caught his fist and put it down. He put his body in between the two, putting a few distance between them. What the hell is going on? Dad, this is my wedding, for Christ's sake, Darren cried, anger clear on his face. I watched as my dad went to stand next to Sandra again, her pathetic cries coming from her ugly mouth. My mom had her hands on her hips, shaking her head, her lips a thin line. The Stone and Crescent pack already standing up in their seats and looked as if they were about to pounce on anyone who made a sudden move. My family members and everyone else just watched with eyebrows raised, their mouths agape. Then all I heard was a low growl that caused me to turn my head everywhere, looking for the unique sound. It was so eerie and caused goosebumps to rise on my forearms. Everyone turned to look at me, and to my surprise I found that the strange noise erupted from deep below my belly to the back of my throat. It was only now that I realized lips were pulled back, showing off my clenched teeth. Holy crap, her eyes, Darren mumbled as I saw the world changing to strange colors before my eyes. What the hell is happening to me? Weston, get her out of here and calm her down. Now, my brother demanded. Thomas grabbed my hand, pulling me out of the murmuring and whispering crowd and out to the grassy plains of my backyard where the wedding wasn't being held at. He quickly sat me down on the tree log. Not caring if my dress got dirty, I slumped down onto it trying to calm my heart rate, but it just wouldn't go down. Thomas grabbed my face, forcing me to look at his clear blue eyes that shone in the moonlight. Emily, listen to me. Just forget it happened. Calm down. You have to calm down, he murmured, rubbing his calloused thumb against my cheek. As I felt my heartbeat go down, my eyes began to see normally again. I smiled at Thomas as he blew out a sigh, wiping the sweat on his forehead. Gosh, I felt so hard began, but then I felt a searing pain in the gut of my stomach. It caused me to fall to the ground on my back, and I began to convulse as I screamed. I shut my eyes trying to get rid of the pain, only feeling the tears spill out of my eyes. To make matters worse, I heard the crackling of bones and the pain of my arm going in a painful angle. Emily! Thomas yelled frantically, and I was surprised to hear his voice throughout my screams and the crackling of my bones. The silver bullets. Oh, what a stupid little girl. I know her secret, and so does everyone else in her family, and her so-called group of friends, but she doesn't. They think that I don't know, but they are wrong. I learned so much of this. I grew up with it. I grew up to hate werewolves. They didn't even know I was at the wedding. They didn't know I was so close to them, mere feet away from that Navi girl and her stupid boyfriend. Or should I say mate? In fact, I played a big role in the wedding, and still they didn't suspect me because I played innocent and clueless to all of this. I smiled wickedly in my dimly lit office, still in the fancy attire I wore at the special event. She got angry, and I wanted to see that the whole time I was here. The events of her growling and her eyes glowing and dilating replayed in my mind over and over again. That was all it took to confirm my thoughts about her. She was the one we had to kill, but let's tease her and warn her first. She acts like she isn't scared, but I know her well enough to know it's a lie. She's pathetic and unbalanced to the world's nature, and I will stop at nothing to make sure she was gone. I threw the cup on my desk across my room and it crashed, the shards falling to the ground. I pushed my already messy hair so it was out of my face. I couldn't believe she was the one, though. Nobody will be happy with me once I kill her, nobody. But did I care? No. I heard a familiar four-tap knock on my office door and I smiled wickedly again. "Come in," I yelled. The door creaked as the young man came in. Someone who I trusted for a long time now. And someone who I could definitely count on for the rest of my life. His brown eyes twinkled with an evil glint and his sinister smirk was obvious. Even this guy was someone Emily would never expect. He sat down in the seat across from me, crossing his arms above his chest. "You looked good tonight," he said. "Perfect timing, eh?" "Thank you, partner," I replied. "Did you do the job?" He nodded cockily, holding up the bottle of toxin I gave him earlier and slamming it on my desk. "I have to admit," he sighed. "You are good. And so are you." "Now I got another job for you," I said, picking in my drawer and throwing my prized possession on the white wooden desk. I smiled as I saw all the pictures of pretty, little Emily rummaging around in my drawer. My partner eyed it with awe as he slightly fingered it. He slowly sat back in his chair, his eyes twinkling as he kept his stare on the object that glinted under the dim light. His smirk returned as he met my eyes and asked, "Now what do you want me to do with a gun?" Chapter 21. I felt my bones breaking, the crackling sound of it roaring in my ears. My screaming and sobbing rang through the night air. I couldn't think of anything as I felt my sweat slick off my body, and the tears rolling down from my eyes that were shut tight. I screamed again and buckled up as I felt my leg twist in a painful way. It felt like my muscles were being punched at, my bones being chopped up, and my head was going to explode soon. The pain was unbearable and all I wanted was for it to stop. I felt myself being lifted up and I tried hard not to hit the person, but that ended when I felt my gut being squeezed and my shoulder bone being dislocated. I kept my eyes shut as the person put me down slowly and the dead leaves on the ground poking my back and arms. It would have felt painful but not compared to the pain I was feeling. I cried again and rolled when I felt my ribs being messed with. I opened my eyes for a fraction of a second and I could see the world glowing around me. I could even see the spider up on the highest branch of the tree. Soon I could tell I was in the forest at the back of my house. I noticed that my dress was tearing, the silk spreading apart as my body seemed to get bigger by the second. I closed my eyes again when I felt the pain in my mouth. It was itchy and I wailed in pain as I felt my jaw being pushed out and stretched. My teeth even felt like someone was trying to pull it out with pliers. 5 minutes later, I felt my body begin to calm down. In fact, I felt great. I felt better than I ever felt. I sighed, but it sounded different to my ears. It sounded more like a huff. My ears perked up and I thought that was strange. However, everything about this night seemed strange. So I quickly dismissed it and picked up my hand to wipe any sweat on my forehead. I stopped my hand in place to study it. Or might I say paw? I was confused beyond anything anyone could explain. Looking everywhere, my eyes landed on the pink material on the ground. I could even see the dust on it and tiny grains of dirt on my discarded, shredded dress. Even my shoes were shredded into pieces. Wait, I was in the forest at night. How could I see so clearly? Then my eyes landed on a handsome boy with clear blue eyes who was coming towards me with caution. His blue eyes were in shock and something else was written on his face. It was indecisive. It was in between understanding and was that disgust. I heard my whines coming from my mouth like a dog whines. Then I looked at the boy once again and inside my head, all I heard was one word. Mate. Weston's POV. I watched painfully as Emily began her change, her bones twisting in unimaginable and painful angles. I wished I could go up to her and hug her, but I had to let her do this on her own like I had done. Trust me. Every time I heard her whimper or cry, I flinched in my seat to get up, but forced myself to sit down. My eyes were tired and my hair was messy from my constant hand that was running through it. Every wolf had to do their first change on their own. It was the only way they could carry themselves for the rest of their lives. I wished that Grace had told her that this would be happening soon, that she would be turning into a werewolf just like us. I knew ever since that night her bedroom window got vandalized. Grace had promised me not to tell anyone about it. She explained that her family was a family of late bloomers. Even Darren was a werewolf, but Grace had told me that he hated it. He hated that he had to feel pain every time. She told me he had a hard time and still has with this whole werewolf process. But what I didn't get was why Grace wasn't one. I tried to work the puzzle pieces, but I'm missing a whole bunch of pieces. My thoughts were snapped out of me as I heard one more guttural cry before it became silent. Then I knew one thing. She finally made it. Her body convulsed one more time before her fur came out, and her bones changed into a werewolf form in a second flat. And there she stood so heart-achingly beautiful that I cried. I cried because my mate had finally found herself. When I stood, I froze mid-stride towards her as I saw the confused look in her green eyes that shone when she saw her paw. But that's not what got me. Not only was she confused, but I was as well. No werewolf had white fur. Nor did they have a perfect heart-black shaped marks on their forehead. They also didn't have teeth bigger than those on Emily. And they certainly didn't have the same glow the moon emitted coming out from their fur. Then all my explanations of all my questions came hauntingly in my face. Emily was a healer. I watched horrified as I took a couple of small steps towards Emily, gulping in as I did so. I was so disgusted, trust me. I didn't believe the legends of one healer being left alive. No one did. They were the reasons why wolves were made, sacrificing their bodies to the full moon, and why my ancestor had lost his son. I was disgusted beyond belief. Scowling at Emily felt wrong and right at the same time. Should I hate her for being what she is, that she didn't even chose to be, or love her always and not care what form she was in? Should I use my werewolf instincts to hate on healers, or use my heart and learn it wasn't her fault? I was so clueless. That was until she looked at me in the eyes and I saw her wolf-like grin. And then I made up my mind. I had to protect her and love her no matter what. It wasn't her fault after all. I, like everyone else, should learn to let go of the past and move on. Healers may be good to those werewolves around the world today. I smiled back at Emily and took 3 big strides towards her. Lifting my hand, I pushed it into her plush and soft fur, relishing in how good it felt. I looked into those green eyes and said, "Hey Els, you're beautiful, babe." Because it was true. She was beautiful. A beautiful disaster like the rest of us. I sat beside her and leaned my head against her tired body. Listening to her deep breathing, I knew she fell asleep from being so exhausted from the first couple of changes. Then I too was dragged into the darkness and pulled into a deep sleep. I felt my head hit the ground hard as my pillow ran away, squealing. I opened my eyes quickly, rubbing the back of my head and groaning. Noticing I was still in the forest, the sun shining through the leaves of the trees, I looked around for Emily. She should be in human form already. I got up, dusting the dirt from my messily tucked white polo. "Ace!" I yelled, looking around everywhere, landing on particularly nothing. "Over here," she shouted back, her hand waving behind a tree and her head sticking through. I smiled as I saw her sexy bed head, even if it were covered in leaves. Her cheeks were flushed and her head had a smudge of dirt on it. I laughed at her cute appearance, but hey, I had to admit she looked sexy. I began to walk over to her, but she picked up her hand and yelled, "Nah, stay where you are." "What? Why?" I asked, my voice showing hurt at her distance. I scrunched up my eyebrows and stuck my hands into my pockets. She stuck her head out again, her cheeks now flaming, before giving me a pointed look. "You know why?" she said, pouting. "No, I don't," I said, confused, shaking my head and looking down. Was she scared that I might hate her for what she was? I didn't want her to think that. I opened my mouth to say something, but she interrupted. "Come out from behind the trees so we could talk." "You don't?" she asked while her eyebrow rose. She studied my expression as I nodded at her, taking one small step towards her. She hid behind the tree again before yelling, "Do not come closer." "I swear, Thomas Zachary Marshall." "Why not?" I asked, waving off that she used my full name. "Because I'm naked, that's why," she blurted. I froze as I was about to take another step and blushed as all the dirty thoughts came into my head. Holy crap. My head was on her soft skin the whole night and I didn't know about it. Call me perv, but come on, if you were a guy you'd understand. She poked her head out again and looked down at the bulge that came back right when it went away just a minute ago. "Trust me. Waking up is the second hardest thing in the morning, if you know what I mean." "Ugh, you pervert," she said, blushing a deeper red. I just chuckled and let the awkward silence fill in. "Aren't you going to give me my dress?" "Nope," I said. "Tore when you, changed last night." She groaned and I couldn't help another dirty thought as she grunted that word. Here, use my shirt, I said, taking off my shirt and feeling eyes on my chest. I shivered at her gaze. Even if this was probably like the 1000th time she looked at my chest. It never got old for her, and her reaction never got old for me. I threw the shirt at her outstretched hand and she caught it perfectly. She stuck her hand back behind the tree and I heard her sigh as she put it on. I laughed when I heard her intake of my scent. She came back out shyly and I couldn't help but look down at her long legs and curves that were seen in my baggy shirt. I was lucky that the white polo was a thick material, because if it was sheer and I saw every inch of her, I don't know what I would do. She stopped a few inches away from the tree before shifting her foot, as if she was self-conscious of her body. I couldn't help but lick my lips at her body. It didn't help with her bed head hair. I groaned and said, "Why do you have to be so beautiful?" "What? No sexy? No hot? Isn't that what guys say?" she asked while laughing shyly. "What? Heck no. When a guy says a girl is hot, he's only looking at her body. When a guy says a girl is pretty, he's only looking at her face. But when a guy says a girl is beautiful, he's looking at her heart and her looks. Trust me when I say that you're beautiful. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." "And how many girls have you told that to?" she asked, laughing again. "About 30, but only once did I mean it," I replied, giving her a heated gaze as to tell her she was the one. I smiled softly at her and she did the same. She rolled her green eyes at me playfully before returning to comfortable silence. But of course I broke the silence and joked, "Come on, big girl. Don't I get a good morning kiss?" I puckered my lips in a joking manner as she laughed and made her way towards me. I felt a stronger connection towards her because she had changed last night. Relief and comfort washed over me as I took in her delicious strawberry scent and brought her close to me, wrapping my arms around her tiny waist and relishing in the heat radiating off of her. I brought my lips to hers and kissed her passionately, every kiss getting better than the last. "Hi there," I whispered while I leaned my head against her forehead and watched as her eyes fluttered open. Emily smiled and said, "Hey there, Dot. You're so corny." "Only for you, babe," I said, kissing her nose. Oh yeah, I was definitely going to love her no matter what form she was in. Chapter 22. "Can I ask you a question?" I asked Thomas in a small voice, the events of last night flowing through my head like a rapid river. The pain in my gut still haunting my stomach, my screams echoing in my ear. And the most important part of all, why did I change into a werewolf? Thomas squeezed my hand, which was intertwined into his. He was shirtless and I tried my damn hardest to stop staring at his chest. He kissed my forehead comfortingly and sighed. "Sure. I'm pretty sure you have plenty of questions after what happened last night." I nodded and scratched the back of my head, my coarse hair running through my fingers. For some reason, the sliver of light that was able to make its way into the dense forest seemed so much brighter. I could practically see the dust particles floating around. My sense of smell was inevitable as well. I could smell Aunt Feli's famous caramel nut pancakes in the air, even if my house was nowhere to be seen yet. I began to ask but was interrupted by the shrill of a bird's chirp that echoed like the sound of screeching tires, only louder this time. I jumped, cringing, into Weston. Clamping my hands over my ears and squeezing my eyes seemed like the best thing to do right now. "Els, are you okay?" Weston asked, his voice cracking while he rubbed a hand down my back. "I promise it's all going to get—" "What the hell?" I screamed, even my voice sounded more melodic, more smooth. I stopped, pointing an accusing finger at him. "Thomas Richard, what is going on with me?" He raised his hands up in the air and scoffed. "Richard isn't my middle name. I don't even have a middle name." "Stop changing the subject and tell me what the hell is going on with me," I said, crossing my arms above my chest. Thomas sighed once more, running his hands through his messy hair. "Look, okay, it's not my place to tell you what's going on. It really is not. But what yell you is that your mom is hiding things from you that you have the right to know. Are you going to tell me what is going on or no?" I said, seething. It was to the point that I grinded my teeth together. That was the line. It was a mere sign that I was pissed off and nobody liked to be near me at my breaking point. "Can you just wait, babe?" Thomas pleaded, grabbing my elbow. I threw his arm away, shocked at my newfound strength. I could feel the tears bridging at the corners of my eyes and my lip began to quiver. Thomas noticed, his shoulders slumped and he sighed. "It's just about 2 more minutes and I promise you won't be in the dark. You just don't get it. How I feel. Why the hell was I feeling so emotional lately? I felt like an old grumpy woman on the premenstrual cycle, but on rewind. I wiped away a stray tear. Gosh, I feel so in the dark on what's happening to me. Do you have any clue on how I feel about not knowing if I'm dying or something? Gosh, Els. You aren't dying, he simply said. Annoyance laced in his voice. He ran a hand down his face. It's killing me not telling you. Trust me. Fine, then I sniffed. Then I started to walk away, ignoring his constant calling and the way he was walking literally on my heels. When I reached the back door of my house, the strong smell of pancakes whiffed into my nose and my stomach growled. It was as if I haven't eaten in a year. The sound of footsteps coming down the stairs echoed louder than usual. Dan, Mom's sweet voice said, but was cut off with the moaning and grunting of pain. Mom! I yelled in concern, racing towards the stairs and finding her. She was in her nightdress, which was unusual for her since it was already 12 in the afternoon. Her pretty face was contorted and slicked with sweat. She had a tumbleweed on her head. Her slender fingers grasped the staircase rail and her other hand clutched her stomach as she was in mid-step. I ran up to her, rubbing her shoulder and helping her get down the stairs as Thomas followed suit. We lead her to the couch and she sighed, slowly getting onto the couch. Mom, I whispered, my voice scrunched up. What's wrong? Oh, it's nothing. Just food poisoning, she said, waving it off. Mom, none of us got food poisoning but you. I questioned. It's not right. Baby, I just ate some bad sushi after the party was over. It was my fault, she answered with a sigh. Do you want me to get anything, Ella? Thomas offered, patting my mother's hand. Oh no, it's all right. I just hope you didn't tell her yet. No. Kept your promise. What is it? I almost yelled, if it weren't for my mother being sick. I sat on the couch opposite of her and looked into her eyes. Baby, I know you know of things called werewolves, my mother said. And I'm here to tell you that. How would I say it? I guess there is no easy way. My family, the Rhodes, are the strongest line of werewolves out there. We are the biggest pack in the whole entire nation. So that means we come from a long line of werewolves, strong werewolves. We were second to the healers. Therefore every alpha, beta, and regular werewolves must bow down to our throne. But let's not be vain, we are friends. We respect each other, she finished, adding air quotations at needed places. She chuckled nervously at my pale expression. Thomas stood back, not interrupting the talk my mother had just given me. So that means you're a werewolf. Darren is too. And now you're saying that I'm one. I paused, my hand shaking. I started to laugh awkwardly. This must be one sick dream. It isn't. In fact, I never thought you were going to change. You were such a late bloomer, baby. Sometimes the lucky Rhodes never become a werewolf. I was hoping you'd be one of them and live a normal life. Mom frowned slightly. And you hid this from me for my whole entire life. I said, my voice raising up. Understand, baby. It's prohibited for us to actually acknowledge you about the existence of werewolves until you encounter one. Or until you become one. Thomas cleared his throat and began awkwardly, Ella, she's the one. My mother sat up in her chair abrupt, her eyes going wide. No, she whispered. Mom, what's going on? I said slowly, afraid of what is going to happen next. Baby, go on into your room. I have to call your grandfather, Mom said, bringing a shaking hand toward her mouth in shock. Mom, I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell is going on. Oh, you're finally home, Darren's voice rang out. He noticed my appearance and a scowl formed on his face at the sight of me wearing Weston's shirt and Thomas being shirtless. Let me tell you, it wasn't a good sight. What the fuck? Did you touch my sister? Bro, didn't I warn you? He began walking towards Thomas while Thomas stood up straighter, his eyes still fixated on me. Tears streamed down my face as I watched the events unfold in front of me. Why is she crying? Darren said, his nose already touching Weston's own. He pointed to me and said, did you get her pregnant? How many times do I have to remind you kids there is such a thing as birth control and condoms? Shit. I'm too young to become an uncle. When Thomas was about to protest and my brother pulled his fist back, I slowly said, you guys lied to me. All my life I've been lied to. It's been a big joke. I was in the dark this whole time. Just a mere third party. You never felt the reason to tell me about the Rhodes secret. I sniffed and began running up the stairs, ignoring the calling of my mom, the shocked look of Darren and Weston's chase after me. Before Thomas reached the top of the stairs, I shut my bedroom door closed and leaned against it, sliding down toward the cold floor. My whole world swayed around me. Do you know how it feels to be in the dark? A secret hidden to you because you weren't one of them, especially if it were your family. I couldn't suppress the shock I was going through. Just when I wiped the cloud of tears away and began to ignore the banging on my door from Weston, a glint under my table lamp caught my eye. I stood up slowly, walking cautiously toward a plate on my desk. As I neared it, I saw a dark brown bottle on a single porcelain plate that came from my brother's party. And written on the plate in dark red ink that was recognizable and a hazard from 10,000 miles away was, "See how easy it was to get to your loved ones. Careful what you eat, darling. You're just lucky your mom's a werewolf and could handle the poison put in her food." Tisby. And that was my breaking point. With a grunt, I grabbed the plate and threw it across my room with strength I never knew I had. I watched as the porcelain plate shattered, the pieces falling to ground like my life was. The video ends, but Emily's adventure is not over. Subscribe to our channel to continue following her journey.